Is there anything Trump can do, Michael Knowles, that you would say, I condemn it, and you hop off the Trump train, or are you going to tickle his taint for the rest of your life?
Side note, why is this man wearing sunglasses inside on television? We've got to check in with the latest battle of the YouTubers and influencers, hosted by Piers Morgan over on his channel, Piers Morgan Uncensored, which is at this point this digital empire and one of the biggest platforms for debates and conversations. It's kind of styled like TV, but TV for YouTube more so. And he had one of these big raucous panels that he has with different perspectives represented, but this one kind of went off the rails, like by Piers standards. And his show is always chaotic, always messy. Even with that in mind, this one was a bit much. So the cast of characters that you need to know here is Daily Wire host Michael Knowles, who is a far-right, ultra-nationalist conservative, and a little bit more of a polished type, though, when in his presentation of things. And then Kyle Kulinski, also known as Secular Talk on YouTube, who is, I guess, what you might call a dirtbag leftist, like vulgar, aggressive, and very progressive, like outflanking Bernie by a lot in his politics. Anyway, they were debating some of the Trump administration's moves on Venezuela and foreign affairs, and it's like, that's an important debate. But it did not result in a serious or at all like respectable conversation. We're going to watch this clip and you'll see quickly how things devolve.
International law goes back to antiquity. It's not some creation of modernity, whether we're talking about the 1700s or the 20th century.
The Geneva Conventions, the Nuremberg Tribunal, the Geneva Conventions and the Nuremberg Tribunal?
Yes, those exist, but international laws, the jus gentium goes back to antiquity. However, unfortunately, a lot of our liberal friends think history began a few decades ago.
The League of Nations was useless. It fell apart, and that's why we had the UN. That's why we had the Geneva Convention.
Right, I'm talking about millennia ago,
because we looked at piles of millions of dead bodies, and we said that's a bad idea. We looked at...
So far, somewhat substantive, constructive debate. The context here is Trump's move against Venezuela, deposing the dictator Nicolas Maduro and installing the vice president as the new leader of the regime, which of course has sparked this controversy over if it's regime change, if it's interventionism, if it's unconstitutional, and all of that. Some progressives and anti-interventionist types are making their arguments about international law. I think international law is kind of irrelevant. It's just so toothless. People violate it all the time for with no real consequences, but they're having a substantive debate so far. Unfortunately, although fairly predictably, that degree of substance wasn't long for this world in this panel. Let's keep going.
We looked at piles of millions of dead bodies and said, that's a bad idea. Let's not do that anymore. Let's actually have a framework and rules and laws. And Trump is blowing that up. By the way, he bombed fishing boats from Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and Colombia. He just did the regime change in Venezuela. He bombed Yemen and Somalia and Nigeria and Iran. He's threatening Greenland and Panama and Canada and Cuba and Mexico. And you sit there the whole time and act like it's okay. Is there anything Trump can do, Michael Knowles, that you would say, I condemn it, and you hop off the Trump train, or are you going to tickle his taint for the rest of your life?
No, there have been plenty of Trump policies.
Tickle his taint, which I'm not 100% positive, but I believe refers to the area under your genitalia and in between that and your anus. Little anatomy lesson for y'all today, courtesy of Kyle Kulinski. I guess, listen, side note, why is this man wearing sunglasses inside on television? What's going on? I don't understand that. That is distracting to me. What's the look that he's going for with that? I'm confused. But regardless, I guess I just think this kind of vulgarity is just crass. It's not effective. It doesn't make any point. It just is just unnecessarily antagonistic. And I honestly think it makes Michael Knowles look reasonable by comparison. And he's actually somebody who with pretty extreme political views, pretty far-right political views in terms of not just being socially conservative, but wanting to impose it on everyone through government theocracy, through not really believing in free speech. He believes in extensive censorship. He wrote a whole book about it. So there's lots of legitimate ways to kind of spar with Michael Knowles in the arena of ideas. But like this vulgarity, and it actually gets worse, as you'll see, to me, it kind of seeds any sort of high ground. It makes you look undignified and unserious. And then in comparison makes Michael Knowles look good and like seem like the serious and respectable one in the conversation, because at least in this conversation he is. Anyway, we're going to keep watching this clip. It actually gets crazier. We haven't gotten to the most vulgar part yet, but do make sure to subscribe, hit the like button if you can, and please do consider becoming a channel member to support my content. That's the way that we're going to keep this channel growing and do more and more things, because I'm never going to pander to the partisan YouTube algorithm. If you're just Team Blue always or Team Red always, it's easy to go super viral on here and make tons of money, but I try to be independent and call out BS on both sides. So your support is appreciated. Become a channel member now at the link in the description, or hit the join button down below. Now let's watch the rest of this clip, because there's a reason it's going viral.
That I've criticized, because he's only right about 99.78% of the time. So the First Step Act, I thought, was a misstep. But I would say the rest. Excuse me. I would say the rest of the administration has been very successful. What's your problem? What's
my
problem?
Is that you're a cuck and you're a hack and you're not an independent thinker and you're meat riding Trump.
Why do you say
that?
Know
that what he's doing in imperialism,
I just answered your
and
question.
You don't care.
I just answered your question. I corrected
Congratulations. You rented your brain to a war criminal, pedophile, rapist. I hope you're happy.
A war criminal, pedophile, rapist? Do you brought up a point. You brought up international law, and you made a very false point, a dumb point, which is that international law began only a few hundred years ago. I corrected you, and I pointed out that the international law is part of the Western tradition. That, excuse me one second. It goes back to antiquity. It's a principle of the jus gentium. And then you said, well, international law has failed because of the League of Nations failure, which I think is actually undermining your argument and proving my point and proving Trump's point, because the liberal internationalism that was established by people like Woodrow Wilson did, in fact, fail, which is why we need to restore an older and more classical conception of the international order, which is precisely what Trump's doing. So I think you've hoisted yourself with your own petard. And then you just make a lot of vulgar sort of non sequiturs because you don't have a leg to stand on.
Oof. That was quite the exchange, wasn't it? Between Michael Knowles here, kind of making his point about international law, and in fairness to Michael, taking the high ground a bit, not really responding with any vulgarity or personal mudslinging. And then Kyle Kulinski on the other side, pantomiming blowjobs and calling him a cuck over and over again. I am seeing this guy, Kyle Kulinski, Secular Talk is his YouTube handle, being praised as like dark woke and as he's so amazing and look at him cooking by a lot of progressive influencers online. And I really don't get it. Maybe I'm just missing something, but I don't understand how they think this is effective or compelling or convincing. Because presumably in a debate like this, your goal is to do one of two things: convince the audience or discredit the opposition or prove them wrong, make them look bad. In both cases, on both prongs, this totally fails. Calling someone a cuck doesn't prove a point, right? Just being vulgar doesn't debunk an argument, doesn't refute what they're saying, doesn't make what you're saying more or less true. And then two, none of this, just insulting Michael Knowles and going at him like this, none of it makes him look bad. In fact, it makes him look calm and composed and reasonable, when in fact he has a very radical political views. But he looks reasonable and dignified in this clip, in contrast to Kyle Kulinski. But that's the thing. They are not actually concerned with those two objectives that I talked about, which would be my objectives if I'm debating someone and trying to advocate for what I think is right in this world. They're concerned with going viral, getting attention, and rallying up their base of like the diehard 10% on the hard left. And they have that base. That's a real group of people, but it's not enough to ever win an election or build a coalition. But you could monetize it and you could be a superhero to that crowd. So they're going to give him attaboys and clap him on the back for this. But at what cost? To make progressives look unhinged and extreme and give them a bad name, and to make Michael Knowles look more reasonable and dignified in comparison? I don't know. I'm not a progressive. I'm an independent. But if I was, I wouldn't be thrilled with that outcome from this, even if it personally enriches Kyle Kulinski or gives him some sort of psychological benefit from all the attention he got that he so clearly craves. But I don't know, man. I just find this kind of thing degrading to the public discourse. Now, his response would be, well, Trump and MAGA already degraded the public discourse so much that, and I really think this is juvenile logic, because two wrongs don't make a right. And by further participating and accelerating a decline, you are only taking us further down that direction. The idea that, oh, well, we're going to be unhinged and nasty to them, so they'll see and then they'll stop and we'll all walk back from the brink of the heated political discourse, to me is total fantasy land. 0% chance of happening. All that will happen is people will ratchet up more and more in response, because they're going to think, wow, these unhinged lefties want people are so crazy, we got to go even further, and vice versa. They bounce off of each other. So to me, this clip kind of summed up the perils of this debate sphere, where people, the incentives for them to just act a fool and get attention or attaboys from their own side degrade their actual position in a broader political context and take away from what I think are very legitimate critiques of the Trump administration on whether they're going too far on lots of things right now, from immigration enforcement to their rule abroad. Well, there's a way to point out critiques of all of it effectively. Then there's this. It's not a Venn diagram because there's no overlap. There's just two circles. But other than that, Kyle's doing amazing here. I don't know. I also don't like this scattergun approach to political debate, where he dropped like 15 different things in the span of 60 seconds, different points that he brought up, and therefore he really brought up none. It's like, because if you're not actually taking the time to flesh out any of those individual criticisms, like Trump promising to release the Epstein files, then not doing it fully, right? But if you're not actually fleshing them out, you're just going boom, 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 then one, all somebody has to do is not agree with or pick apart one of those things to kind of feel like, oh, well, that whole rant is wrong. And two, you're not really advancing the ball on any of them or changing anyone's mind on any of them, because you're just throwing them out there, and it makes it easier to just dismiss you, especially when you combine it with crassness and vulgarity, which again makes you look like a clown. But it did in fact succeed at getting him the attention that he desired. So congrats, I guess. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, and do consider becoming a channel member to support sober, thoughtful commentary rather than vulgar nonsense.